Hey guys, in this video I want to share with you 4 essential facts about Boise real estate that I found that most people don't know. Now I got tired of boring real estate videos, so I decided to try something new and present the information in a more fun and creative way as if I was on a game show. So I hope you enjoy the video and let me know what you think down in the comments below. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Boise Real Estate Game Show, where you are about to learn something new about Boise real estate. I'm Benjamin Friedman, your host, and with me today on set are our 2 contestants, Ben Foreman and Benny Foreman. And in our back studio is our local real estate expert, now newly appointed associate broker, Benj Foreman, who will give us some insight into some of the questions that you are about to hear on this show. In this episode, we have 4 questions for our contestants to answer, so let's jump right into it. Question number 1, do owners have to disclose if their property has been infected with a disease? Yes. Ooh, I'm sorry, but the answer actually is no. Benj, can you give us some details on that, please? Yeah, great question, especially in light of this whole COVID debacle that we've all been through over the past several years. A lot of people probably think that you have to disclose if there's a disease on your property. The truth is, though, that in Idaho, we do not. That's what Idaho considers to be a psychologically impacted property. So if your property has had an infectious disease, if there is a sex offender that has been living on or near your property, or if there was a suicide or a homicide on your property, you don't have to disclose that. Now, it's important to remember also that this is different than an adverse material fact. Those have to be disclosed by the seller and by the agent. So, psychologically impacted properties don't need to be disclosed, but adverse material facts, those do. All right, thank you for that, Benj. Let's move right along now to question number 2. Do real estate agents have to work in the best interest of the general public? Yes. Ooh, actually, I'm sorry, but actually the answer to this question again is no. Benj, fill us in on the details on this one, please. So in Idaho, an agent does not actually have to work in a person's best interest if that person has not signed a buyer's representation agreement with the agent and has become that person's client. Now, all of this is described on a form called the Agency Disclosure Form, or the Blue Disclosure Form, that all agents have to present to every individual on the first substantial business contact, and it describes the differences between a customer and a client. Now, in theory, you can buy a home with an agent as a customer. Just note that if you have not become that person's client, though, that person does not have to work in your best interest. The agent does not have to keep your information confidential. The agent does not have to assist you in negotiating when you get in contract on a property, and that person does not actually have to be available to help you find a property. Now, I once had somebody tell me that I should find a different broker if my broker is making me sign a client agreement with an individual. Now, that's actually a misunderstanding. This was actually written by the Idaho Real Estate Commission back in 1996 for the client, for the customer. Now, I also realize that some people don't like to sign agreements right away. So what I usually tell people that I've just met, you do whatever you feel comfortable with. What I'll try and do is show you the value of becoming a client. I mean, at the end of the day, who wouldn't want their agent to work in their best interest, to maintain their confidentiality? But I realize that some people it takes a little bit longer for them to come to that realization, so that's totally fine. You do whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, thanks for that, Ben. So it sounds like you're saying that it's much better to become a client than it is a customer. So you might want to remember that if you're thinking of moving to Boise and you're wanting to work with a real estate agent. Let's move on to the next question, though. Question number 3, are sellers allowed to reject an offer simply because of a buyer's financing? I got this one. Yes. Correct. The answer actually is yes. Benj, what do you have for us on this question? Yeah, so the federal government is actually really strict when it comes to fair housing laws. Financing, though, is not a protected right here in Idaho. Sellers are allowed to reject somebody's offer strictly on the basis of how they are planning on purchasing your property. Let me give you an example of how this possibly could affect you here in the Boise housing market if you are buying a home through financing. Let's say you are a first-time home buyer and you're putting 3% down. it's possible, not always, but it's possible that the seller will interpret that to mean that you, the buyer, are not in the most financially stable position. Now that's even more magnified when it comes to FHA loans, Federal Housing Administration loans. These are loans that are insured by HUD, and so the lender can actually give the borrower a better deal. You can get a loan with a lot lower credit score, with a 580 credit score, sometimes even lower than that, depending on how much money you are putting down. So if a seller is presented with two offers, one of which is an FHA loan, one of which is a conventional loan, it's possible again that the seller could interpret the FHA loan to be more risk and then go with the conventional loan. Now all of that is just in theory. Honestly, in my experience, it doesn't usually work out that way. Usually when a lender approves a buyer for a loan, that lender has verified the buyer's income and financial position, and in 90% of the time, once a lender issues a pre-approval letter, that borrower's financing is not usually going to crumble, or that person is not usually going to get into financial trouble before you get to the closing table. Thanks again for that, Benj. So if you're selling your home, make sure your agent double checks to see what the buyer's financial position is like. And if the lender says he's okay, chances are things will probably be okay. But let's move on now to our fourth and final question here on the show in this episode. This is a tough one, so get ready. Do water rights run with the land in Idaho when a property is sold? I'm gonna go with no on this one. Ooh, the answer actually is not no, Ben. Oh, so yes? The answer actually is not yes either. The answer is it depends. Benj, what's going on with this question? Yeah, a bit of a tricky question. Let me try and explain this. Some states recognize what are known as riparian rights. And what that basically means is if you have water that is flowing over your property or under your property, you have the right to use that water. Idaho, though, is one of 17 states in the US that does not recognize riparian rights. The state of Idaho actually is the one who owns all of the water in the state of Idaho, and they are the one who distributes a water right to individuals to use that water. And the way they give out rights is they give rights on the doctrine of first in time, first in right. And what that means basically is if you are a property owner and you want to apply for a water right, they will check to see what other water rights have been issued. And if giving you a water right will diminish the water of somebody that already is receiving water, they won't give it to you. Now in Idaho, you don't need a water right if you are watering a parcel of land that is under half of an acre. If you are watering over half of an acre or more than 13,000 gallons of water per day, you do need a water right, even if you are watering from your own private well that is on your property. Now in Boise, a lot of the properties that are about a half acre or 1 acre already have an irrigation water share. So it's very rare actually if you are buying a 1 acre property, for example, that you would have to apply for a water right. The important thing to remember though is that if you are acquiring a piece of property here in Boise, in particular larger properties, several acres, don't automatically assume that that water right is going to be transferred automatically to you, the new owner. Double check to make sure that it indeed will be. Now let me make one final comment on water and public access. I remember growing up as a kid in Haley that my dad would go out to Silver Creek to go fishing. And I remember him coming home several times telling me that the owners of the property that lined Silver Creek would put barbed wire across the river and say that it's private property and it's closed to public access. Now that actually is illegal. In Idaho, if you own a piece of property that has a navigable stream that cuts through it, the public is allowed to use that stream for fishing and recreation. And the state of Idaho defines a navigable stream as any stream that will float a piece of cut timber that has a diameter of 6 inches or greater. In other words, if you can float a log down the stream, you can use it for fishing and recreation. Okay, right on. Thanks, Benj, and thanks to our two contestants, Ben and Benny. I'm Benjamin. It's been a pleasure hosting your Boise Real Estate game show. If you liked this video, hit the like button and the subscribe button, and we will see you in the next one.